$1 billion. That is how much Intel says it will not make this quarter due to massive flooding in Thailand, the worst flooding in 70 years. It's crippled Thai manufacturing, including the hard drives essential for personal computers. That means a steep drop in demand for Intel's chips. The world's largest chip maker has cut its forecast for the current quarter from $14.7 billion to $13.7 billion. And there are bigger challenges ahead as well. Our senior West Coast correspondent Jon Erlichman has more on Intel and the hard drive shortage.
Images like these dominated newscasts in October. As flooding took over Thailand, business came to a stop, and that made hard disk drives like these hard to come by.
This is more of a supply issue as opposed to demand.
After China, Thailand is the second biggest maker of hard drives, which are often described as the heart and muscle of a computer. At the time, Intel thought the computer industry could weather the disaster, that it could find enough drives from other suppliers. But with fewer hard disk drives available, PC makers have been cutting the number of PCs they have in stock. And if fewer PCs are hitting the market, Intel's getting fewer chips into PCs. What makes things more challenging for Intel boss Paolo Otellini is the company's slow shift from making chips for PCs to making chips for better-selling smartphones and tablets.
The long story short is that if you're solely focused on PCs, we have seen a notable amount of risk.
But Intel is doing its best to catch up, and earlier this year partnered with Google and its Android operating system to better break into the chip market for phones and devices.
You'll see Intel Silicon inside of shipping phones in the first half of next year, so we're right on the cusp of that.
Meanwhile, another challenge for Intel has been holding on to its home turf, because there are other players like ARM Holdings that are looking to get cheaper priced chips into the PC market, and so far some industry players like HP have been receptive to that. Emily?
Thanks, John. Here to help us dig deeper into Intel's $1 billion sales cut is Gus Richard, managing director at Piper Jaffray. He's been following the semiconductor industry for 27 years and even worked at Intel in manufacturing for a year himself. Gus, welcome to Bloomberg West. Great to have you here. So your read on this is that demand is destroyed, not deferred. How so? What do you mean by that?
Well, certainly it's down, and what's happened is this has happened during the holiday season. So clearly somebody's going to buy an iPad instead of a PC, and I think some of that demand is not going to come back.
So is this forecast cut really because of the flooding itself? How would supply hurt demand?
Well, it's one of the components is missing, the hard disk drive. You can't sell the unit, and half of hard disk drives were manufactured in Thailand, so there's a real shortage, and it's hurting particularly the low end of the PC market.
But isn't there a broader issue with the PC market in general, in that PC sales are generally slowing down as more consumers buy tablets?
That is my contention. I think generally Intel has put up much better numbers this year, but I don't think it's sustainable. They're clearly not in the tablet market, or not in a significant way. And I think going forward, it's going to be tough for Intel in 2012 because a new operating system, Windows 8, is coming out, and I think people will kind of wait and see what that looks like.
So part of the problem is that Intel is not better leveraged in other businesses outside of PCs.
That's correct.
How far behind would you say Intel is from, for example, Apple?
2 to 3 years. They won't have an equivalent product out until, my best guess is 2013 in the spring. That's a full 3 years after Apple put out their first iPad.
2 to 3 years is light years in the technology industry, isn't it?
It is indeed.
So how does this show us what other challenges Intel will be facing next year and in years ahead?
Well, I think as the form factor shifts and people move to tablets and they are more popular with consumers, which is 2/3 of the computer market, I think that it's going to cause growth rates for PCs to slow. And it's going to be difficult for Intel to capture that market back.
And one of the things you think is going to happen is that they're going to become more of a manufacturer rather than designing their own chips. Explain that to me.
Well, if you think about Apple and the processor they use, there's nothing leading edge about that. And effectively, designs have changed such that it's difficult for Intel in using a general purpose processor to be competitive. So one of the things Intel can do is they manufacture better than anybody else. They can manufacture for a company like Apple. giving them the benefits of their manufacturing technology and the vertical integration that Apple has in terms of designing their own chips, and Intel's process would really push them forward.
That would be a huge shift for Intel, wouldn't it?
It would be tremendous, and I think they have tried to do this in the past. So far they have not been successful, but I think that it's something that they are going to revisit in the future.
Where do other chip makers fit into this? We know TI is having trouble as well with, poor demand macroeconomically. Is that the same thing, or is that something different?
It's an additional problem. Clearly the debt crisis in Europe has hurt the macro. I think overall demand has been weak, and Intel is a little bit harder hit than others simply because of this additional supply problem that they're facing.
And now Seagate, a major maker of hard drives, has said they're going to have problems for the next several quarters. So how long do you expect a knock-on effect for Intel for this specific issue?
This specific issue will hurt them, I think, clearly through Q1 and into Q2. Unfortunately, in the second half of 2012, you're going to get Windows 8 coming out, and I think people are going to then pause in front of that major operating system upgrade.
And there will be even more competition. All right, thanks for that. Gus Richard of Piper Jaffray, great to have you here on the show.